Welcome to Ed Bain's NFL Past Performances. This is the index by game page. It shows us all the games that are being played by each week. Let's take a look at week 2, the Chicago Bears at the Green Bay Packers. Just hit that and the results of what we're going to be looking at comes up. Now, always the road team will be on top, followed by the home team. So we're going to separate this in a lot of different ways. The purpose of these past performances are to handicap the spread, the totals, and the teams that these teams played against on the road and at home, and separate them by winning records and losing records. So let's take a look at the Chicago Bears playing against the Green Bay Packers at Green Bay. Now, when you look at this, here's the road. This is their one-loss record, and you can see that the Chicago Bears are a really good team on the road. They've had 16 games, 10 wins, a 63% win rate. The score for all of those games are right beside them. Now, when you look at the coloring of this, the green means this is the games they won. So all you have to do is follow the green, and you'll see where they won their games at. Now, also, you can see that not only do they have a 63% win rate, but they average 20.1 points per game on the road against all types of teams. So we now get a feeling and can get a picture of how they actually produce on a point schedule. This spread is the big thing one of the big things, tools to bet against or with, according to bettors. The spread is actually very interesting. The spread is how the line makers make money. They make a 10%, they want to make a 10% vigorish on whether you're the favorite or the underdog. So they actually give points to try to even out the betting. Now the spread is going to produce either a favorite, a pick, which means you can pick either team, or an underdog. And I've separated them by favorite and underdog. Fav is favorite, dog is underdog. So the Chicago Bears were on the road 16 games. I've taken 2 seasons, combined them together, then separated them by 16 games on the road so I can get a look at how a full season looks on the road, and also by a full season at home. And now what we want to do is find out how Chicago actually produced those 10 wins on the road. Now, they went to post 4 times as a favorite. They actually covered the favorite 3 times. And with this, what we get is an actual idea of how they actually performed. And meaning that 3 out of 4 is a very good win rate. But when you go to their underdogs, you can see that the dog, everything that they won would be in bold, so you can get a better idea of how they're actually producing. And all of the bottom where you see the yellow is, everything that's in bold means it's above 53%. Now 53% is the break-even point, so you have to win 53% of your bets in order to make money betting on sports. The Chicago Bears went to travel on the road 12 times out of 16. They won 6. They won 50% of the time. And here's how they did. They were the dog against the New Orleans Saints, and they covered the spread. The spread was actually 5, where they were given 5 points. So that actually Chicago started out 5 points ahead of the New Orleans Saints. They scored 30, plus 5 is 35. New Orleans only scored 13, so they covered the spread. The next game down, they lost. They were given a 6.5 point spread against Detroit, and they started out 6.5 points in front. And when you look at it, the end of the game, they scored 18.5, and Detroit won the game. They scored 24. When you look at this, you can see they scored 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. As an underdog, they won. So that's a pretty good record. And what you want to take into account is, why are they the underdogs? This is a pretty good team on the road. Is this a good bet as an underdog, or is it a better bet as a favorite? And a lot of times when you look at the spread, in this case, the Chicago Bears were a 7-point underdog to the Green Bay Packers. You may think that's a good bet as an underdog, but maybe it isn't. Maybe there's a better bet to make. The point totals is one of the ways of looking at games to figure out what is the better bet. Is it the spread or is it the totals? Now the totals mean that the two teams have been assigned a number, and you can bet it over that number or under that number. The number for the Chicago Bulls on an average is 41.8. And when you look how they produced, out of 16 games, they were over 5 times, and out of 16 games, they were under 10 times for a 62% win rate. And that right there is what you want to pay attention to. What it tells you is this is a very good team on the road. And when you want to bet them, you may want to bet them on the road as an underdog. Now the point totals for this actual game was 51.5, and you can see that there are no 50s in the totals that the Chicago Bears were assigned while they were traveling on the road to different teams. So this is this would be the first indicator to me that this would be a good total bet for the over and under, and particularly the under. 1 quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters, 4 quarters. This is how they performed every game by each quarter. And here's what their averages were. 4.2 points a quarter on the first quarter, 5.3 on the second quarter, 4.1 on the third, and their best quarter is the fourth quarter. They scored 5.8 points. Now this is all road. Just keep in mind these are their road scores. So we know one thing about the Chicago Bears right now. We know that they only score 20 points a game on the road, and their biggest quarter is the fourth quarter, and they are under a touchdown. So my feelings are is if they're headed, they're going to have a tough time catching up and winning the game. First quarter score. That means how many times did they score points when they got the ball? They scored the first points of the first quarter. There were 16 games. 6 games they scored first, 37%. Third quarter score, in other words, a halftime, third quarter starts. 16 games they played in, they scored 7 times, a 43% score rate. Meaning that if you were going to bet proposition bets, you may be either betting that one of these two or passing them depending on their percentages. The home means all the home teams that the Chicago Bears played against over the last 2 years. Now, one of the problems with the home teams is if I'd only taken 1 year, that would be 16 games, 8 games at home, but the teams would have to play two games in their league. And that would only leave 6 games to handicap. That's why there's 16. And you can see all of the teams that they played, New Orleans, Detroit, Tampa Bay, Philadelphia, and so on. Now, I separated all of those by their win records, so we can actually see how they actually performed against winning teams, teams that won more than they lost, and teams that lost more than they won. And there are 7 teams that they played against that had winning records out of those 16. And they won 2 at 28% win rate. So right there is another indicator of where you want to look the type of team they're playing against. In the case of the Green Bay Packers, this is a really good team, so you have to be careful about how you want to select this. The under 500 teams, they lost more than they won. They had 9 games and 8 wins and 88% win rate. So there it tells you what kind of teams they're actually beating. They went to 9 games with teams who lost more than they won. They won 8 of them, 88%. That's where you want to center up on. And you can see how this team actually performs on the road for 16 games. By the way, on this average score, they only allowed 16.9 points per game. And that's plus 3.2 on the Chicago Bears. So they outscored their opponents. This is another reason why you need to, when you look at things, you need to make sure you handicap correctly. And what you want to look at is the spread, whether the favorite or the dog, the total, and the over and under, and any of the proposition bets that you want to take a shot at. But you also only want to play them when they're really going to win. 9 out of 8 8 out of 9 wins on the road against sub 500 teams. That's a pretty strong stat. Now, the problem is when you look at one team, you're only looking at Chicago on the road. So we need to take a look at Green Bay at home. Here's 16 games that the Green Bay Packers were at home on, and they won 15 of them. A great team. This is a really, really good team. Now, here's what their average points are, 35.3. This is a high-scoring, high-flying team. And when you look at that, you go, well, the Green Bay Packers against the Chicago Bears, well, the Chicago Bears are only scoring 20 a game. They're scoring 35. And so you know immediately at home, Green Bay is a dominant team. On the spread, they were the favorite 15 times. They covered the spread 11 times for 73% win rate. That's huge. They were only the underdog once to the Detroit Lions. They covered the spread. They got 6.5 points. This high-flying, 35-point-a-game team got 6.5 points against the Detroit Lions, and they ended up scoring 45 plus 6.5. So you can see why they covered. On the totals, the total points, the over and unders, they averaged on the totals 44.8. Now you know that the Chicago Bears scored 41.8. So already there's a difference in the totals. They were over 12 out of 16 times. 3 out of every 4 games they scored more points than they were allotted by the line maker. Only 4 times they went to they went under their point totals for a 25% win rate. So you you now know that they are an over team. It's better to bet them over, and the Chicago Bears are an under team. So you have two really different approaches, a very defensive-oriented team and a very offensive-oriented team. The first, second, third, and fourth quarters, the Green Bay Packers at home average 8.3 points, 11, 8.5, 6.6. Now this is almost every quarter they are averaging a touchdown a game. Their biggest quarter is the second quarter. They come out really hard in the second quarter. Even if they're down or up, it doesn't matter. You can see how they're actually producing their touchdowns and their field goals, which is mostly touchdowns. And on their first quarter score, they scored first 11 out of 16 times, 68% score rate. That means if you're going to make a proposition bet on who is going to score the first of the game, it would have to be the Green Bay Packers versus the 37% of the Chicago Bears on the road to the Green Bay Packers. On the first score at the half, after the half, 10 out of 16 times, a 62% win rate of scoring first. So that is very strong, those two figures. This is, of course, a scoring team, a big scoring team. So you need to evaluate how this team scores first at the first half versus how the Chicago Bears score on the road in the first half. And you can see there's a pretty big difference. The teams that they played against. Now, the Green Bay Packers actually had only 6 teams that actually had a 500-plus winning record. Out of those 16 games at home, they won 5 and 83% win rate. And the Chicago Bears were only 7 and 2, 28% against the same type of teams. But when you look at the Green Bay Packers playing the weaker teams in the league, the sub 500 teams, they went 10 for 10. Guess what? That is a bet. Now it can be a parlay bet for a 3-team parlay or 2-team parlay or multiple team parlays. But when they're 10 for 10, 9 for 8, you have to look at those and say, okay, those are the types of teams that I want to play in the right situations. Now, on this particular game, the way to play this, in my mind, which is the way I did it, when I looked at this, 41.8 is what they scored as the totals for the Chicago Bears, 44.8 on the Green Bay Packers. Now, the Packers, as much as they score at 35.3, only had one game over the last 2 seasons at home where they were allotted a point total of 50 or more. And on that one, they were over. And one of the things that you have to look at is say, okay, the 51.5 point totals for these two teams may not be in play simply because of a defensive-minded team like the Green Bay Packers. Now, also, you can take a look at how the Green Bay Packers and the Chicago Bears matched up, because they will play each other twice. And also, you need to understand that only out of these 16 games on the road is by Chicago and 16 games at home by Green Bay, only one game we had the point totals of 50, so that was definitely an under. The actual score of the game was the Green Bay Packers 23, and then the underdog Chicago Bears were 10. If you give them the 7, it still was only 17. So the Green Bay Packers covered the spread, and they were on the under. They only scored between the two of them 33 points. So if you'd have bet the under, you'd have hit it. So that's how the stats stack up as a match for road teams and home teams, and how they actually performed against the spread, whether it's the favorite or the underdog, the totals, whether the over or the under, how they performed by each quarter, and how they performed on who was going to score first, and who the records were of the teams that they played and who they were actually winning on. That's how the past performances work when you're trying to handicap, when you're going to handicap the line makers and the score and the teams home and away. And that is the proper way to handicap. I would say to you now that take a look at these past performances and good luck.